Hi guys, and welcome to Timberwolf's Den. Now, let's get the obvious question out of the way. What is Timberwolf's Den all about? Well, I want you to think of Timberwolf's Den as a celebration of all the things guys like to collect. Now, if you're like me, you reach a certain point in your life where you feel like your career's okay, you're at a reasonable point in your life, you have some disposable income, and you really want to indulge now in all of the things that you are passionate about, all of your hobbies, all of the stuff that you like to collect. In my case, I like to collect toys and action figures. I also have a small collection of vinyl records, and recently I've become more and more into watches. I will come back to watches in a bit because I want to tell you the story of this particular watch. But you know, whatever that is, whatever it is that you are interested in, some guys are into art, some guys I know are into sneakers, some guys I know are into audio hi-fi equipment. But whatever it is, all of this stuff, sooner or later, needs to be kept in a place. And usually that place is referred to as a man cave. Now, what is a man cave? So, if you look at the definition of man cave in Wikipedia, the term man cave is a metaphor describing a room inside the house, such as the basement or garage or attic or office, or outside the house, such as a woodshed or tool room, where guys can do as they please, without fear of upsetting any female sensibility about house decor or design. So before we get into anything, I want to give you just a quick tour of Timberwolf's Den and the story of my own man cave. So I grew up playing with all kinds of toys. I grew up in a household where I had two brothers, and my mom and dad were very, very good at pretty much allowing us to play with toys, and there was no shortage of them. We had tons of Lego and Playmobil, and especially Star Wars. We had all kinds of stuff growing up. And as soon as I had my own apartment, I started buying mainly action figures, right? It's starting up an action figure collection. And then, of course, as you move from one place to another, you try to take that stuff with you. And as your place gets bigger and bigger and your collection gets larger and larger, you need more and more of a special place where you can keep all of this stuff and, you know, put some of this stuff on display. So, so my wife and I moved to this place in 2014, and we realized that we had an extra room here in the basement. And in this extra room, I decided this was going to be finally my proper sized man cave. So there was quite a bit of work required, and one of the things that I needed to make sure of is that there was no shortage of shelf space for all of my books and my comic books and my graphic novels. So I had to put one whole side of the wall devoted to to all of my books. So I had the interior decorators develop a customized shelf built to spec with space specifically for graphic novels of different size. There's a couple of lit up cases encased in glass for action figures. And then of course there's this space in the middle where I had to have the entertainment system, where I had my turntable and my record collection, as well as of course the home theater system. There's something to be said about having an electronic drum set in your house that you don't really know how to play formally because you've never taken a lesson, but you can bash around with it anyway just because it's fun. So this is my reading chair, and I've designed it so that I can sit up and read, but I can also recline and be able to look up at the 50-inch screen hanging from the ceiling and be able to watch movies in my own home theater system. So over here behind me is my desk and PC, as you can see. Now this area was actually built originally to be the closet because this room was originally meant to be a bedroom. So I had the old closet ripped out and decided I could save so much space by putting the desk in here. So some of you may already have your own man cave, and some of you may be planning to one day have your own man cave. So in this series of videos on this channel, I want you to be able to think of this channel like a source of inspiration, and a place where you can get some ideas, and as we go over time, take a look at other guys and other people's man caves, and what they've set up and what they collect. And in each episode, we'll try to zero in on like one or two things that people find the most value and talk about that and tell the story behind that. So let me start talking about one of the things that I love to collect, and that's watches. I want to talk about, first of all, something written by a man named Matt Hranek, who's an author. Matt Hranek is the author of this fantastic book, A Man and His Watch. And in this book he says, for many men, watches seem to have a deeper meaning than just keeping time. Watches mark special occasions, they tell the world a little about who you are, and they can, if you're lucky, connect you to the people in your life who matter most. So in this first episode, I want to talk about this watch. This watch is the Omega Dynamic, circa 1972, 1973. Now, most of you are probably familiar with Omega because of its association with the 007 movies. The Seamaster has been a feature of the last several James Bond movies, starting with Pierce Brosnan all the way to Daniel Craig. And of course, the other thing that you would know Omegas for is the Speedmaster, also known as the Moonwatch. But today I'm going to talk about the Omega Dynamic. The Omega Dynamic was actually one of the discontinued lines of Omega, so they don't make Dynamics anymore. Now this information is courtesy of the Omega Museum, omegamuseum.com. It is found under the Lost Lines. The Omega Dynamic was first created for the Prix de Ville de Genève in 1965. The line was launched to the public in 1968. The elliptical case was conceived to work with the anatomy of the wrist. The crown was integrated into the case so that it would not disturb the fairly aerodynamic flow of the line of the watch. And the design of the dial was consistent with the clean, functional aspects of the watch. The straps, made in one piece from a porous synthetic material called Corfan, had breathing holes and were widened near the case for a secured holding on the wrist. A watch's owner could easily change the Corfan straps and metal bracelets with a key that came with the watch. In fact, this watch was such a success that more than 1 million examples would be sold between 1968 and 1972. Now, this particular watch belonged to my dad. He bought this sometime between 1972 and 1973 on his first trip to Geneva with my mom. Now, I'm not sure if that trip was a business trip or a holiday, but somewhere during that trip, my dad wandered into an Omega shop in Geneva and picked up this watch. After my dad passed away and I moved out of the house, I moved to another country, I kind of lost track of the watch. And then I think it must have been about 5 or 6 years ago, I found the watch, or I found out that my dad's watch was still around. It was with my brother. It wasn't running anymore. It probably needed some spare parts. And so I said I'd take it off his hands and try to find somebody who would fix it. Now, one of the things, to my horror, that my brother had done, because these straps were so rare, is that he had somebody solder on a metal bracelet to the actual casing of the watch. And of course, that I knew was going to reduce the watch in value, but more importantly, it didn't look anything like the watch I remember my dad wearing. At least it didn't resemble how I remember my watch when my dad wore this watch. So I wanted to make sure that I could restore it back to as close to its original form as possible. Anyway, after going from one shop to another here in Singapore, a lot of guys wouldn't touch it, because they knew that they'd have to disassemble the watch. In order to undo the soldering, they'd basically have to cut into the case itself, which is going to be very complicated, so a lot of guys didn't even want to go near it. But finally, I found a place called Horror Lab here in Singapore that agreed to do it for me. And they, all of their technicians, all of their guys who work there are all Swiss trained. So they all have the relationships with the factories back in Switzerland. So they were able to get the original parts. I think in this case, there were a few parts inside that they replaced, including the crown and as well as the actual crystal. The best thing, of course, is that they were able to remove that metal bracelet without damaging the casing. And online, I was able to find somebody who actually makes these bracelets to spec to the original, including, having an Omega branded buckle. Anyway, fast forward, a few months and several $100s. The watch is now in pristine working order. Look at it; it runs perfectly, and it's back to its original one-piece bracelet, and it just looks fantastic. I really, really love this watch. So that's the story of my dad's watch. Someday, this watch is going to be inherited by my nephew Luis, who is actually named after my dad. And it's just a small example of how watches can have its important place in a person's life and family. So that's it for this video. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I will be showing you more of the stuff in Timberwolf's Den, but I also hope to be able to feature some of your stuff. And I'll show you some of the man caves of my friends and the things that they collect as well. Until then, see you guys later.